What if I told you that the doubt living in your mind was never yours to begin with? That it wasn't born alongside your gifts, but installed quietly, persistently, by repetition. Not by truth, not by evidence, but by years of exposure, to voices that said it couldn't be done, to eyes that watched others settle for less, to examples of once powerful men shrinking to fit inside cages built by fear and cemented by comfort. What if I told you that every hesitation you've carried, every whisper that told you to wait, to hold back, to question your own strength, was not yours? It was borrowed, it was programmed, it was rehearsed, but it was never born. Because you, my friend, were not made to hesitate. You were made to build, you were made to rise, you were made to win. Not later, not when the stars align, but now. And if you stay with me, not distracted, not half listening, but fully present, fully breathing in these words, and you return to them daily, you will begin to notice a shift. Not in theory, not in imagination, but in identity. Because this is not a motivational talk. This is a reprogramming, a full recalibration of the system within you that for too long has allowed doubt to whisper first. By the end of this journey, you will no longer recognize the man who accepted smallness as destiny, because I'm going to show you something most never learn. Doubt is a habit, and habits can be broken. But belief is something greater. It is a decision. It is the act of remembering the man you were before the world convinced you to shrink. And today, we return to him, the one who never waited for permission, the one who didn't require proof before stepping forward, the one who acted as if victory were inevitable. Let me tell you something that most men never hear in a lifetime. That version of you, he is not gone. He is still there, waiting, watching, wondering when will you stop listening to the old voice and start moving like a builder again. So say this with me. I was not made to doubt. I was made to win. Say it louder. I was not made to question. I was made to decide. Say it until your voice trembles and the dust of hesitation falls off. I do not wait for courage. I move anyway. Because today we are not here to flirt with belief. We are here to make it law. And once belief becomes law, in the mind, in the body, in your words, in your results, then something extraordinary happens. So stay with me, from the first word to the final breath, because we're about to begin the process of burning doubt out of your identity for good. Let me be very clear. You were not born with doubt. No man is. Doubt is not a natural instinct. It is not hardwired into your soul. It is not your original voice. Doubt is a condition, a disease of the environment, a parasite of the mind that only grows when fed. And the world is full of feeders. You were born with curiosity, with hunger, with fire. No child enters the world questioning himself. Look at any young boy. He doesn't ask if he can walk. He tries. He doesn't wait for permission to explore. He moves. He falls, rises, screams, reaches, not because he is certain, but because he hasn't learned fear yet. That is the truth of you. That is who you were before the world trained you otherwise. Doubt was not your default. It was taught, it was modeled, it was repeated, until it became a reflex. By the time you became a man, you had been told, directly or indirectly, that your power was dangerous, that your fire must be tamed, that dreaming was for others, not for you. And over time, you accepted hesitation as wisdom and fear as prudence. But hear this now. If doubt was learned, then belief can be built. And that building doesn't begin with results. It doesn't begin with motivation. It begins with remembering who you were before the shaping, before the shrinking, before the world told you who not to be. It begins with one small act of rebellion, rejecting the idea that you must hesitate just because others did. Let me show you how this works, not in theory, but in the lives of men who refuse to carry the lie. Let's begin with a man you've heard of, Henry Ford. He was not born into wealth. He had no elite education, no golden ladder handed to him, and yet he refused to learn doubt. When the world called his vision of a mass-produced automobile madness, he didn't retreat, he moved forward. His own engineers, men with more schooling, told him it was impossible to build an 8-cylinder engine in one block. You know what he told them? Produce it anyway. Not once, not twice. Every time they failed, he gave the same command: produce it anyway. That wasn't genius, it wasn't luck, it was belief. A belief so firm, so immovable that it didn't flinch in the face of impossibility. Ford had trained his mind to obey his vision, not his environment. He had unlearned doubt and replaced it with decision, and that decision became law, not just for him, but for an entire industry. Now consider another name history will never forget: Thomas Edison. This man failed not once, not 10 times, but over 10,000 times in his pursuit of the electric light. 10,000 failures, 10,000 opportunities for doubt to take the throne. But Edison didn't negotiate with doubt, because he had already installed something stronger: identity. He didn't say, maybe I can. He said, I am the man who will. And that identity became armor. Each failure didn't pierce him, because failure wasn't part of who he was. His belief wasn't based on evidence. It was built through repetition. He told himself again and again, it will work, I will work, something will work. And so, eventually, it did. Understand this: belief is not a feeling. It is not something you stumble into. It is not granted by meditation or handed to you when conditions are perfect. Belief is built, like a bridge, like a habit, through daily decisions and disciplined action. You choose belief even when you don't feel it. You repeat belief even when your old identity screams for attention. You walk like the man who knows, until the man who doubts no longer has a seat at the table. That's what Andrew Carnegie understood. When I studied him, when I sat with him, I discovered something that forever shifted my understanding. Carnegie didn't see belief as optional, he saw it as structural, as foundational. He once said, if a man does not command his own mind, someone else will. That is exactly what doubt is. A sign that you've surrendered command, not by choice, not all at once, but gradually, by default. You let doubt set the tone, set the standard, set the limits. But that ends now, because now you're awake. Now you know. The doubt you carry was not born with you, it was given to you. And now you are giving it back. So speak this aloud: doubt is not mine. I refuse to carry it. Say it again: I do not live by hesitation. I live by decision. This is how you begin. Not by feeling powerful, but by speaking power. By walking with a posture that reflects certainty, even before certainty takes root. Because the subconscious does not obey logic, it obeys repetition. And every time you move like a builder, speak like a leader, act like a winner, you are building belief. The man you were born to be, he's still there. He's just waiting for the noise to stop and for the command to rise. This is that command. Let us now speak of the most powerful moment in any man's life. The moment he makes a decision so clear, so final, so permanent, that the old self can no longer survive it. Because here's a truth most men never realize. Identity is not discovered, it is decided. You don't stumble into greatness, you declare it. You don't wait to become confident, you decide that confidence will be your posture starting now. You don't hope to one day become fearless, you act even while afraid, and that very act begins rewriting the code of who you are. Every man lives inside an identity. The tragedy? Most live inside one they never chose. An identity formed by accident, by fear, by repetition, by the small opinions of small minds. And because they never consciously declared who they were, they've become a collage of contradiction, powerful in potential, paralyzed in practice. But the greats, the men who shaped history, they all did one thing first. Before building wealth, before creating legacy, before moving nations, they decided who they were. Not based on circumstances, not based on feelings, but based on vision. Let me bring you back to Henry Ford. Before he was an industrial titan, before he reshaped transportation, before the newspapers knew his name, he made a single quiet decision. I will build a car for the common man. That was it. A sentence, a commitment, a line in the sand. And once it was drawn, everything changed. He no longer acted like a mechanic. He no longer thought like a worker. He became a builder of machines, of ideas, of a future only he could see. And when the world mocked him, when the bankers scoffed, when his own engineers laughed at his vision, Ford did not bend. Why? Because his identity was decided. He had already chosen who he was, and when a man chooses who he is, the world loses its power to define him. Thomas Edison did the same. Do you think the light bulb was a fluke, an accident, a lucky guess? No. He declared, "I will illuminate the world," and then step by step he moved toward that vision. When others called him a fool, when failure greeted him daily, when success felt 1,000 miles away, he kept going. Why? Because in his mind, the result had already happened. He was just catching up to it. Understand what I'm telling you. Results follow identity, not the other way around. If you believe you must prove yourself before you can claim greatness, you've already lost. The men who rise are the men who decide to rise first, in silence, in solitude, in certainty. Even Abraham Lincoln, a man forged in the fires of war and division, did not lead by public opinion. He led by decision. He didn't wait for consensus. He didn't seek universal applause. He had already determined the value of freedom, the weight of unity, and the dignity of mankind. And because that decision was final, fear could not break him. Now it's your turn. You must write your identity in stone, not in sand, not in pencil, not in whispers. Declare it. Who are you? Who have you decided to be, regardless of what you've done until now? Because until that decision is made, doubt will always have a voice. So say it aloud. I am not a man of hesitation. I am a man of execution. I do not drift between identities. I have chosen one and I walk in it. And don't say it once. Say it until your subconscious hears it so often, so clearly that it accepts it as law. Because that is how belief becomes identity. That is how decision becomes destiny. Let me offer you something more than advice. Let me offer you a ritual. The same ritual I witnessed in the lives of Carnegie, Schwab, Ford, Edison. Each morning before the world speaks, you must speak, before it hands you its opinions, its distractions, its fears. You declare who you are, not silently, not timidly, aloud, with authority, with clarity, with command. You write it, you repeat it. You move in alignment with it even when you don't yet feel like it, because feeling follows form. The identity you form will summon the emotion to match. This is law. Carnegie used to say, a man's habits are simply his beliefs in motion. And what are habits? Nothing but repeated actions born from a chosen identity. The man who sees himself as a king does not move like a servant. The man who has decided to lead does not wait for permission. The man who knows he is meant to win does not flirt with doubt. He moves, and with every step his identity deepens. His posture shifts, his presence sharpens, until he becomes a force, not by accident, but by design. So let me ask you plainly, what have you been waiting to decide? What version of yourself have you postponed? What identity are you pretending isn't yours to claim? Let that end. Today, this is the line between past and future, between doubt and decision. From this moment forward, you do not hesitate. You do not drift. You declare. You write the new name. You define the new frame. You burn the bridge to the old self and you never look back. Say this now. From this moment, I do not doubt. I decide. And the world will adjust. Because there comes a moment in every man's journey when the greatest progress doesn't come from a new step forward, but from cutting off the way back. You see, movement without commitment is not progress. It's dabbling. It's dipping a toe into destiny while keeping one foot anchored in doubt. But no empire was ever built by a man who kept a backup plan for mediocrity. No legacy was ever written by the one who left the exit door cracked open, just in case. The men I studied, Carnegie, Edison, Ford, Lincoln, they all understood a sobering truth. If you leave the bridge standing, fear will always tempt you to cross it. You must burn it. You must destroy the exit if you want to force destiny to open the door ahead. The phrase burn the boats has become cliché. But for those who lived it, it was not a metaphor, it was survival. Let me take you to 1519. Hernán Cortés, Spanish conquistador, lands on the shores of Mexico with a few hundred men, facing an empire that outnumbered him many times over. And what did he do upon arrival? He burned the ships, not because he was reckless, but because he understood human nature. When the mind believes there is a way back, it never commits fully to moving forward. And though I do not romanticize conquest, the principle is eternal. If you want to be free, you must eliminate retreat. This applies not just to war, but to every ordinary day of your life. Henry Ford did not say, "We'll try this car idea, and if it doesn't work, we'll return to making carriages." No, he staked everything. When he committed to the Model T, he shut down production of every other car. Against the advice of his board, against the fear of his peers, he simplified, he streamlined, he focused, and in doing so, he created a revolution. Why? Because there was no way back. Ford didn't seek comfort, he sought completion. He didn't scatter his power, he concentrated it. He didn't leave the door open to doubt, he nailed it shut. That's how revolutions are built, not with options, with obedience to a single vision. Thomas Edison didn't have a plan B either. 10,000 failures? Yes, but not 10,000 doubts. Each attempt was made by a man who had already sealed his fate. He once said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That is not the voice of a man hedging his bets. That is the voice of a man who locked the exit door, threw away the key, and set fire to the room behind him. Andrew Carnegie, a young immigrant with nothing but a job in a telegraph office and a hunger for greatness, made a decision early. Poverty would not write his story. He did not chase success casually. He pursued it like his future depended on it, because it did. He didn't dabble in possibilities. He devoted himself to mastery of industry, of communication, of decision-making. And because of that, he rose. So I ask you now, what is your retreat? Be honest. Is it the job you keep as a safety net, even though it dulls your soul? Is it the voice you silence because you fear being misunderstood? Is it the dream you delay because you tell yourself you'll start when the timing is better? These aren't strategies, they are shelters for fear. And as long as they exist, you will never walk with full power. You cannot act like a man who's meant to win if half your energy is devoted to retreat. You must commit fully, and prove it by eliminating the exits. It's easy to say, "I'm all in," but it's another thing to act as if there are no other options. That's what the greats did. Abraham Lincoln did not entertain compromise when it came to preserving the Union. He knew the cost, he knew the risk, he knew war would tear the nation, but he also knew a soul cannot survive with divided allegiance. So he picked up his pen and wrote his stand into history. Now you must do the same, metaphorically, mentally, practically. Burn the retreat. Let fear scream, let doubt panic. Let the old self beg, but do not go back. Say it aloud, there is no retreat. I have made my decision. The door behind me is gone. I move with finality. I act without escape. And don't just say it today. Repeat it until your body forgets what it felt like to hesitate. Because this isn't about drama, it's about discipline. Burning the bridge is not a shout, it's the quiet, unshakable choice you make before dawn, that today, again, you will not run. And if you hold that line long enough, something profound happens. Fear stops talking because it knows you're not listening anymore. There is a voice in every man's mind that shapes the quality of his life long before the world lays a single hand on him. It's the voice that speaks when the door closes, when the lights go out, when the results don't show, when the applause fades. And that voice is not always kind. It is not always true, but it is always present. And if you do not train it, it will train you. This is the process of autosuggestion, the deliberate, repeated feeding of the subconscious mind with instructions so clear, so consistent, so emotionally charged, that they become identity. And here's what most men never realize. The subconscious mind does not reason, it accepts. It obeys whatever is repeated to it with emotion. This is your greatest threat, or your greatest weapon. Let me show you what this looks like in the real lives of builders. When Henry Ford said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right," He wasn't being clever. He was revealing the foundation of how he built his empire. Ford didn't have the most knowledge. He didn't hold the most degrees. He didn't master every moving part of his business, but he trained his inner voice to say, "It will be done." And because he repeated that, his subconscious mind accepted it and went to work building the future. Here's the mistake most men make. They speak to themselves carelessly. They let doubt, sarcasm, hesitation, and passive self-mockery run on loop, and then they wonder why their lives keep stalling at the edge of progress. The subconscious mind doesn't understand your jokes. When you say, "I'm such a mess, I probably can't do this, I'm just lazy," you might laugh, but your mind doesn't. It records, it installs, it obeys, and soon you do too. Thomas Edison, after failing thousands of times, was asked by a reporter, "How do you keep going after so much failure?" His answer, "I haven't failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." You hear optimism, but underneath, that was programming. A mental script so deeply rooted that failure couldn't take hold. Every time he said those words, he rewrote the voice within, and the voice obeyed. Andrew Carnegie was relentless in this discipline. He instructed every young man under his mentorship to write down his chief aim in life and speak it aloud every morning and every night, not silently, not wishfully, spoken, out loud, with intensity. Why? Because the voice you speak becomes the voice you hear, and the voice you hear becomes the voice you believe, and what you believe shapes your world. So let me ask you, what have you been saying when no one's around? What do you tell yourself when the results don't show up, when the momentum slows down? Do you whisper, "I'm tired. Maybe I'm not the type. This probably won't work"? These aren't harmless phrases. They are weapons turned inward. And the more you repeat them, the deeper they sink. But the good news? You can change the script. It starts with discipline. Each morning before the world offers its version of truth, you must declare your own. You must look yourself in the eye and say with conviction, "I act before fear has a voice. I do not drift, I do not delay. I am the kind of man who keeps his word even when no one is watching." And again at night, just before sleep, when the mind is soft and the subconscious is open, you speak your aim, your identity, your next move. Because the mind remembers what it hears last. This isn't fluff, this is neurology. It's how thought becomes habit, how habit becomes instinct, how instinct becomes destiny. Even Charles M. Schwab, industrial giant, was known not for his genius, but for his optimism, his mental discipline. He refused to entertain failure. He redirected it. He reframed it. He rewrote the inner voice daily. Now it's your turn. Create your script, not borrowed affirmations from a book, your words, your beliefs, written with fire. Let me help you begin. I do not explain my power. I execute it. My actions train my mind to believe. I am not waiting for motivation. I move with discipline. Write them, speak them, repeat them daily. And here's what will happen. The inner voice that once wavered will harden. It will sharpen. It will begin to speak with clarity, even when life feels uncertain. And when that happens, everything changes. So let me say it to you plainly. Most men confuse emotion with guidance. They think, if it feels heavy, it must be wrong. If it feels uncertain, I should stop. But listen closely now. Discomfort is not a red light. It is the toll you pay to walk the road of greatness. This is how you kill doubt. Not by waiting for it to leave, not by reasoning with it, but by drowning it in truth. You don't manage the old voice, you don't soothe it, you replace it. You install a new one built with fire, with finality, with repetition so clear your subconscious has no choice but to obey. Once the new voice becomes dominant, doubt will still knock, but your mind won't even hear it, because the inner voice is too focused, too decisive, too trained to look backward. So I challenge you, don't just hear this speech, make it your ritual. Not once, not twice, again and again and again, because repetition is how we become. There comes a moment in every man's life when he must decide, will I follow how I feel, or will I follow what I've decided? Most men, without realizing it, live under the rule of emotion. They act when it feels good. They pause when it feels hard. They speak when they're confident. They hide when they're uncertain. and they wonder why their life never becomes what it was meant to be. But the builders, the doers, the producers, the titans of history, they lived by a different compass. They were not led by emotion, not by opinion, not by fear dressed as logic. They moved by faith. They didn't wait to feel brave. They acted before courage arrived. They didn't wait to be certain. They trusted what they decided more than what they felt. Let me make this crystal clear. Faith is not magic. It's not mystical. It's not some mysterious force floating in the clouds. Faith is a mental attitude, a muscle, a discipline. It is built, brick by brick, through repetition, through decision, through the refusal to waver. And here's the secret. Faith is a choice. You don't need a reason to believe. You choose to believe, and the reason will follow. Henry Ford embodied this. He was told again and again by experts, engineers, bankers, that his vision was impossible, that people wouldn't want a car, that an 8-cylinder engine in a single block couldn't be done. And every time he gave one reply: build it anyway. Why? Because his belief wasn't dependent on the external world. It was born inside him. It was installed through repetition, through forward motion, through the refusal to entertain contradiction. Ford didn't always feel strong, but he always led himself like he was. That is the key. You don't need to feel the faith. You need to move like it's already there. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times, yet he never wavered, because he had already decided success was inevitable. And once that decision was installed, he no longer needed the world's approval. Each failure wasn't a sign to stop. It was evidence that progress was unfolding. That is faith, not emotion, but identity backed by action. So let me say it to you plainly. Most men confuse emotion with guidance. They think, if it feels heavy, it must be wrong. If it feels uncertain, I should stop. But listen closely now. Discomfort is not a red light. It is the toll you pay to walk the road of greatness. Abraham Lincoln knew this well. He was elected into chaos, a nation tearing itself apart, a war that would cost lives and divide homes, a mission that most men would have run from. His cabinet was fractured, the people were uncertain, and the voices around him grew louder with doubt. But Lincoln did not flinch. He didn't wait for popular support. He didn't delay his convictions until the crowd agreed. Instead, he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, not because he felt ready, but because he believed in the worth of freedom, in the dignity of unity, in the value of mankind. He moved not from emotion, but from belief. And that's what made him great. Emotion feels real, but it lies often. It speaks the language of the past. It echoes your old habits, your old identity, your old fears. But faith speaks from the future. Faith speaks from the man you've decided to become, not the man you used to be. That is why I press so hard on the power of repetition, because repetition creates faith. The more you speak belief, the more you act from belief, the more it becomes your default. And once that happens, emotion loses its grip. Faith begins to lead. So I ask you now, who is leading your life? Is it the man who moves based on fire, vision, and purpose, or the one who waits for comfort and certainty to arrive first? Because those are two different men, and only one of them builds empires. You must make the decision. I lead from faith, not from feeling. That means you show up even when tired. You speak truth even when your voice shakes. You take action even before the results appear. Because faith, true faith, does not wait for evidence. It moves with conviction. Let me give you a simple way to live this out. Each morning, declare your beliefs out loud. Not what you feel, but what you choose to believe. Say, I act before I feel ready. I am not a slave to emotion. I command emotion. I walk by faith because the man I am becoming is already real. Then move, immediately, without debate. You build faith not by thinking about it, but by moving as if it were already yours. Yes, you will feel resistance. Yes, the old thoughts will rise, but those are ghosts. And you don't negotiate with ghosts, you replace them with fire. This is the same discipline that guided Charles M. Schwab as he built the foundation of U.S. Steel. He wasn't always certain of the outcome, but he carried himself with certainty. He understood a truth that few ever master. People don't follow emotion, they follow conviction. And the only way to carry conviction is to practice it daily. So train yourself to move without needing to feel perfect. Say it now. I do not trust the voice of emotion. I trust the voice of purpose. I do not wait to feel powerful. I act until I am powerful. I lead myself. I do not follow the wind. Say it every morning. Let it sink in. Let it replace the old whispers that used to run your mind. Because the man who leads from emotion will always be led by fear. But the man who leads from faith, he becomes unshakable. He becomes unstoppable. He becomes inevitable. Let us now go deeper. Because faith must be matched with movement, not random action, not scattered energy, but decisive execution. There is a law that governs all progress, and it is this: indecision is the seedbed of fear. It's not failure that paralyzes a man. It's not rejection. It's not difficulty. It is the simple refusal to choose. And I tell you plainly, no man who hesitates can lead himself. Because if he won't lead himself, he'll be led by something else, by circumstances, by emotions, by the opinions of others, by the shadow of who he used to be. But the man who decides, the man who moves, that man becomes a force. I found this law in every successful man I studied. They shared a habit. They made decisions quickly and changed them slowly, if at all. This was true across every domain: industry, invention, politics, wealth. They didn't sit in endless analysis. They didn't require certainty before acting. They simply decided and let clarity emerge through motion. Let me show you what that looks like in practice. Henry Ford. His engineers told him it was impossible to cast an 8-cylinder engine in a single block. They tried. They failed. They returned expecting him to pivot. But Ford, he didn't flinch. He looked them in the eye and said, "Produce it anyway." Not once, not twice. Every time they came back with failure, he gave the same command: produce it anyway. That wasn't luck. That wasn't blind optimism. That was a decision so firm that the world eventually had to bend. You see, the world does not yield to the man who is clever. It yields to the man who is certain. Thomas Edison lived the same law. Imagine failing 10,000 times at anything. Most men would quit after 10. Some would quit before 1. Most would ask for permission. Most would wait for proof. But Edison, he had already decided, I will invent the light bulb. And because that decision was final, every failure became just another step forward. Not because Edison had superhuman endurance, but because he had eliminated the option to stop. That's what you must do now. You must stop leaving back doors open. Stop entertaining maybe. Stop debating your own destiny. Just decide. And once the decision is made, move. Even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, even if the full path isn't yet revealed. Because clarity does not arrive through stillness. It is forged in movement. Charles M. Schwab was not the oldest, not the most experienced, but when Andrew Carnegie offered him the reins of a massive consolidation, he didn't hesitate. He didn't stall. He didn't form a committee. He said yes, then figured out the details on the way. That's how momentum is born. You act, and the mind follows. You move, and fear starts to dissolve. You execute, and your subconscious begins to trust you. And that right there is what most men miss. Every time you hesitate, you tell your subconscious, I don't believe myself. But every time you act, even imperfectly, you reinforce the identity of a man who does what he says he will do. And soon your body, your posture, your thoughts, your very presence begin to reflect that new reality. So I ask you, What have you left undecided? What path are you still waiting to walk? What opportunity have you delayed while waiting for more time, more clarity, more confidence? And how much has that hesitation already cost you? Because indecision is not neutral. It is expensive. It drains your energy. It weakens your posture. It erodes your belief. And it hands power back to doubt. But you can shut the door on all of that right now. Say it aloud: I do not wait. I do not hesitate. I do not consult fear. My decisions are final. My movement is immediate. My word is law. That's not bravado, that's identity. You don't try, you declare. You don't ask, what if? You say, this is the way. And when the mind resists, as it will, you don't argue, you move. Because action is your answer. Every day you delay, fear gets stronger. But every day you decide and follow through, you become stronger than hesitation itself. Let me give you a framework, something you can use, not just today, but every day from here forward. Because discipline without design fades. And if you want to lead your life, you must build rituals strong enough to carry it. Here is the pattern I've seen in every high performer, every empire builder, every man who became unstoppable. Step 1, make your decision quickly. From a place of purpose, not from emotion. Don't wait for the perfect moment, because it won't come. Decide. From vision, from values, from identity. Step 2, move immediately. Do something, anything, that confirms the decision. Make the call, clear the schedule, take the step. Even if it's small, start. Because the longer you wait, the more you invite the old voice back in. Step 3, refuse to reopen the decision. Unless new facts emerge, not new feelings, do not question what you've chosen. This is where most men fail. They confuse discomfort with misalignment. But discomfort isn't a sign to turn back. It's the weight of transformation, and it must be carried if you want to cross into the next version of yourself. Step 4, reaffirm daily through repetition. Say, I am a man who moves. I am a man who leads. I am a man who acts. These are not slogans. They are signals to your nervous system, to your subconscious, that this is who you are now. That is how the mind is retrained. That is how confidence is installed. That is how fear is removed. Not all at once, but through the daily habit of movement. Even Abraham Lincoln, in the darkest moments of the Civil War, when uncertainty was thick in the air, acted. He didn't have unanimous support. He didn't have certainty of outcome, but he had something stronger, a decision already made. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation not because it was popular, but because he had already declared that freedom must win. And that decision gave him the strength to lead. Not popularity, not applause, not consensus, decision, final, immovable, sacred. And that same power is available to you now, but only if you're willing to shut the door on delay. Say it one more time. I decide quickly. I act without apology. I do not explain who I am. I demonstrate it, then move. Pick the thing you've been postponing. Close the loop. Finish the thought. Seal the intention with execution. Because the man who moves first wins, and the man who wins is no longer afraid. There comes a moment in every man's life when the voice of doubt must not be debated, not negotiated, not comforted, but killed. Not with softness, not with patience, but with the force of a man who has had enough. Because doubt is not something you manage. It is something you starve. And you starve it with faith, repetition, and a fire so hot it burns the old self to ash. First, understand this. Doubt is not truth. It is habit, a reflex, a noise so familiar you began mistaking it for wisdom. But it was never your guide. It was never your protector. It was never your ally. It was fear, dressed up in more intelligent clothing. If you don't call it by its name, you'll keep dressing it up as logic, as caution, as strategy. when what you're really doing is betraying the man you were born to be. So make the decision now. Doubt dies here. Not tomorrow, not next time, now. Let me show you how the great ones did it. Abraham Lincoln, the man who held together a fractured nation. He didn't live without fear. He buried his own child while leading a country at war. He was hated, ridiculed, attacked, and yet he chose belief every single day. Not belief in outcome, but belief in identity. He was the man called to carry this burden, and that certainty carried him through storms that would have drowned lesser men. Andrew Carnegie, born into nothing, walked among giants with no pedigree, no connections, but he had one thing they didn't: definiteness of purpose. He drowned doubt in repetition. He wrote his aim. He spoke it daily. He lived inside it until failure no longer fit inside his atmosphere. That's not arrogance, that's discipline. That's how a boy in a telegraph office became the richest man in the world. Henry Ford, surrounded by doubters, journalists, engineers, even government officials, never allowed their doubt to enter his system. Why? Because the internal repetition was louder than the external noise. He kept telling himself what was possible until that belief hardened into steel. And that steel built an empire. And you are no different. The only thing separating you from those men is what you allow to repeat inside your own mind. Doubt is not real. It's a shadow, a recording, a loop, replaying in the background because you forgot to change the track. Now is the time to overwrite it. Not with empty positivity, not with fake hype, but with identity. Say it aloud. I do not argue with doubt. I replace it. I do not let fear speak twice. I silence it with action. I do not shrink. I do not flinch. I do not rehearse weakness. Because the more you rehearse belief, the more your nervous system begins to adopt it as normal. And it doesn't matter how long you've doubted. It doesn't matter how deep the rut is. Because repetition rewires everything. But here's what you must know. Doubt will not die gently. It will fight. It will whisper again, in the quiet hours, in the pauses, in the fatigue, in the moments when progress slows. And when it does, you do not engage. You do not comfort. You do not reconsider. You return to the script. You repeat the command. You reaffirm the truth you're installing now. Say it. I do not live in hesitation. I move in fire. My belief is louder than my fear. My repetition is my shield. My identity is my weapon. Let this burn into your chest. I am no longer allowed to be the man who doubts. He is gone, buried. We don't negotiate with his voice. We don't visit his grave. We don't check in on him when things get hard. He had his chance, and he wasted it. Now it's your turn. And the man you've chosen to become, he walks differently. He doesn't wait to feel ready. He moves because he said he would. He doesn't need to see the whole plan. He trusts the law of motion. He doesn't fear failure because his identity is not rooted in outcome. It's rooted in action. Say it now, with finality. I do not need more time. I need more fire. I do not entertain doubt. I enforce belief. I do not delay. I dominate. Let your new identity be sealed, not with hope, but with repetition, with daily decision, with the relentless refusal to let the old voice breathe. Because this is your moment. Not just to hear these words, but to install them until they become the default, until your subconscious no longer recognizes the old you, until doubt doesn't know where to find you anymore. Because the man who wins, he doesn't need 1,000 answers. He just needs one thing, to know who he is, and then to walk like it's already done. So walk and don't look back. The man you used to be, he's not coming with you. Let him go. Let him die in silence. Let his excuses rot. Let his doubt dissolve. Let his hesitation collapse under the weight of the new man rising in his place. There's no funeral, no eulogy, just distance, because from this moment forward, you don't play with belief. You don't hope to change. You command it. You embody it. You make it law. Say it now. Say it like fire. I do not wait for belief. I embody it. I do not revisit the old me. I bury him. I do not explain my conviction. I walk in it. Let this moment mark the shift, the line, the fire, the declaration. You've trained your voice. You've trained your movement. You've trained your mind. Now, let it all take root. Say it one last time. The man I used to be no longer exists. The man I am now builds without apology, leads without hesitation, and acts without permission. And from this point forward, so does the world. It bends, it adjusts, it reflects the man you have now chosen to become.